All right, welcome back. I'm so excited because I have Abby Galvin back, and Abby Galvin was one of the first guests of my show when it started, and it is still the second most downloaded episode after Elena Brower's episode, which is
Oh,
unsurprising. It's the two of you are the very popular ones. But in case you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen to it. Abby Galvin is the founder and owner of The Studio in New York City. It is the studio where your yoga teacher practices, including me, although it's been a while, online still. And Abbie, to me, is one of the mothers of Katonah Yoga. Abbie, I'm so happy you're here.
nice to have me. I am I'm having a blast. Whatever it is, talking about
With everything.
yeah.
Well, I have big questions for you today. First question that I'm going to ask you is actually really simple, but so this weekend my 300-hour yoga teacher trainees are starting to dive into Katonah material because they get about 40 hours of Katonah yoga in their program with Marco and I. And Marco Miliavaca, for those that don't know him. And I gave them an assignment after their first lesson that they had to write for me a very succinct description of how they would explain Katonah Yoga to someone.
Right.
Because this comes up all the time, and teachers, even who are teaching it, will launch into a 3-page essay about what Katonah Yoga is. So I want to hear from you a succinct, what is Katonah Yoga?
Well, like people I mean, I don't mind the question, but what I hear from other people is like, give me the elevator pitch. And like, I don't want to give the elevator pitch on anything, because
No, I don't either because life's complex. So go for it. Tell me what Katonah Yoga is.
so it is a way to mediate the polarities of your practice, your life, your nervous system, your interior and your exterior. It is a way to map out and travel territory of your imagination in order to have a good life. It
Mm,
is a way to be reflective. It is a way to measure up.
yeah.
It is a way to have an interior and exterior experience in all of its complexity. So
Mm,
basically, it's a way to navigate a practice that also is a metaphor for your life.
that last
And
bit was really good. A metaphor
yeah,
for
so
navigate
it's,
a practice that is a metaphor for your life.
yes, because, life is so complicated. The practice is so complicated. Yoga itself is a self-cultivation technique, but how you do it is what differentiates, Iyengar from Kundalini. The techniques, yoga itself, is a big tent,
Yeah.
and it behooves all of us to know a lot of different portals, a lot of different ways in. But I like our material because it fits, it measures, it proofs, it's a map, it gives you a formality in which to put
Yeah.
yourself so that you can navigate your own life with it. So I really I love our material more and more as I get older.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah,
more
me too.
appreciation for its depth, dimension, complexity, and the way that it
Yeah.
really speaks to me as as I find my longevity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautifully said. I found Katonah Yoga in around 2014 and started officially studying and coming to New York in like 2016, I think was my first adventure to New York to spend time at the Katonah Center and also with you. And for me, I started practicing yoga when I was 12 years old. And I found yoga because I was in a lot of pain. And then it ended up being the thing that damaged me the most. So by the time I was 27, I could hardly function. I couldn't teach. I was in physical therapy in excruciating pain because I have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and I'm extremely hypermobile. I didn't know that at the time. And so I was doing all these extreme contortionist practices and I was like bedridden by the time I was in my late 20s. And I continued to teach and practice. And this is one aspect of it that when I found Katonah Yoga and the fits and the folds, it gave me my practice back that I thought I was going to have to lose. Like doctors, medical professionals were saying, you can't do yoga, it is damaging you. And this organization of asana is origami, and learning to leverage the body's geometry rather than contorting yourself changed my whole life.
Right. In a funny way, people who are flexible are at a liability because they can't feel their boundaries.
Yeah,
So the boundaries is the life challenge for
yeah,
people who are extremely flexible because if they've got their hand in the fire, they can't feel it,
that's right.
right?
Yep.
There's no scaffolding. And so they have to really work harder than other people to create that safety, which is boundaries, scaffoldings. You know, it is not so much a limitation as it is knowing where they end and where something else begins. And for people who are flexible, it's very difficult. And the whole world of yoga has always said, be flexible, put the soles of your feet together and push your knees down. It's like, whoa. And so a lot of what we do is kind of antithetical to some of more traditional yoga.
Right. Yeah. It is and it isn't, because the thing is like classical yoga says that you need to develop tapas, right? This idea of discipline and alchemical transformation. And the tapas is whatever is non-habitual for you, because even as you say often, like the yoga is to develop ourselves. If you already knew how, you wouldn't need to do it if it was already your first nature. And
Mhm.
so the tapas, I always tell my students, the tapas for a really flexible person is boundaries and stability and scaffolding, like you said. But I couldn't find that in Iyengar and Ashtanga and the practices that I grew up in. I could not find that because they were standing on me and wrenching me and pulling me deeper and praising that I could put my feet, wherever.
Well, I think the other thing is that none of these practices, by the nature of the practice, is damaging. The way that it's
No,
taught, I mean, the way that people teach our practice can be damaging.
of course.
My issue with a lot of students is that after they finish their 200 hour, or 300 hour, whatever they're doing, they stop coming to class. They stop
Yes.
studying.
Yeah.
And commencement, graduation is called commencement because that's when it's supposed to begin.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's what
And so
commencement
many
means.
teachers have no more than a 200-hour certification. And I mean, I have teachers tell me all the time, I'm already certified. It's the most common thing a yoga teacher says to me is, I'm certified already. And I'm sitting here like, I started when I was 12. I'm 44. I'm in trainings all the time. I'm either retaking a mentorship or signing up for Dagis's class or just taking digital classes with your team online to keep feeding myself, or taking a class on the lymphatic system, or studying Chinese medicine and applying it to my work. You can't stop. One of my teachers, Douglas Brooks, always used to say, this is your yoga, don't let up.
Mhm. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's your yoga,
mean,
don't let up.
th- um, the thing that I love about yoga is that it's not exercise you do after work. It is, it's a way of thinking. It's a way of approaching something rather than
Yeah,
a physical practice, although it's also a physical practice. But anybody can learn to do physical yoga.
that's right.
Or if it can be substantiated with theory, well, then you have something to play with because then you can really use your mind to adjust your own body. Eventually I'm all for no props.
Yeah,
I'm all for like less and less and less of the props because the props are scaffolding and scaffolding comes off the building.
that's
And
right.
so
Yeah,
eventually, but it is only if you become your own sovereignty. It's
yeah,
only become your body becomes your own sanctuary. It has to be more than the teacher's practice, which is what you're going to class for. That's somebody else's practice. Your own practice, well, that is something totally different and something that I am really most probably in our whole canon. I am most passionate about home practice because that is where you have sovereignty.
One of my biggest learnings from, well, I have a million learnings from you. I was looking at my notebooks of Abbey notes because I often take online courses, but I like to do them in the privacy of my home. I don't often come live. So some trainings I've done with Abbey, she didn't even see me, but I was there. And I have piles of notebooks that are just my Abbey notebooks. And one of the things I learned from you that I pass on to all my students is this thing about community class being for community and education, and that, private lessons are to stabilize you and teach you so you can go to community class and feel supported and be able to play in the orchestra there. And
Mhm.
then you take what you learn in community and bring to your private practice. That's such a beautiful way to frame those streams of practice.
Yeah. Oh, that's so well said. Well put.
Yeah.
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 I
It's
really
from you. I quoted you in my notebooks. So you're like, well said. I'm like, it's from you.
well, I've said a lot of things, but but that is that to me, when you have a home practice, you have like a foundation of everything. You have a
Mhm.
foundation from which to teach with, because also you confront your own foibles. It is an unmasking of the self.
Yeah,
People say, "Oh, your practice, your classes can be confronting," but it's only confronting if you're doing your own work. Otherwise, you can go in and do anything you want in that room. But
that's right.
but I have learned through my decades of this that in order to progress as a person, your home practice is literally building your character.
That's right.
You don't want to be at the mercy of your lunar nature. You want to build a character by virtue of being so conscious that you have to challenge yourself. For example, what you were saying, that whatever, if you think of the five, if you think of the five element theory, whichever one you don't have in your primary articulation of the five elements is the one that your life becomes about,
Yeah,
because that's
that's
the one
right.
that's going to challenge you to be able to face the issues that are going to invariably come up in your life. You
And
know,
to really fulfill the vision of your life and the Ming, as they call it in Chinese medicine, the
right,
mandate on your life. If you want that, you have to pull the pieces that you don't have and use them to elevate what you do have so that it becomes really developed and dimensional. And
right,
that's the work of a life. That's people are looking for their purpose. I'm like, you have to create your purpose based on the
yeah,
natural giftings and talents and the seedlings you have, and craft it by virtue of developing the parts of yourself that you don't have already. And that's the
that's
work.
right.
And
And no teacher can give that to you. A mentor
no,
can lead you to it or open up a portal, but only you can find it. And if you don't have an interior life, it's very hard to be reflective enough to find it yourself. But that is really, I mean, you said it beautifully. That is really the task for each one of us. So when people talk about like, what's your Ming, your mandate from heaven, it's like, that's a metaphor. You know,
yeah,
that is a metaphor for do your own work. Or,
yeah.
like lately I've been talking about that thing where if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill it.
Kill the Buddha. Yeah, if
Kill
you
the
meet the
Buddha,
Buddha,
right.
kill the Buddha.
No one's gonna give it to you.
Yeah,
It is yours to find. And that's like an awesome task. It tells you live a reflective life. It tells you keep
yeah,
exploring. It
yeah,
tells you, and there's so much to explore. Use yourself well. One of the best things that's happened, the since the pandemic, a lot of ways that we learn and teach are different. And I'm all for
completely.
it. Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's like been really great. First of all, we're like, we were always global, but we are really global. We're not just global because I travel all the time. Now we are really global because we have access to each other by, Zoom, which I love Zoom.
yep,
And we put together these immersions, these 2-hour lectures that happen every Thursday, depending on the theme that we're exploring for the season. And this season is restorative yoga because it's winter and it seems like it's an obvious thing.
yeah,
And it's been really interesting to be able to not just teach them, but when you have to teach a 2-hour lecture with a practice in it, you have to curate material.
that's right.
You have to pull from here, pull from here, and pull from here so that you literally are in the center of your circumstances as a metaphor. And so I really, I really love the way that together we can discuss examples, people's experiences as I present the material in the way that we're exploring it for that session. And
Yeah.
so that has been really great. And I have learned so much having to prepare these immersions,
It's
even
the
in that.
best way to learn because if you can't
Yeah,
articulate something and codify it for other people, you don't really understand it. But where people make the mistake is thinking they shouldn't start preparing it because that process of pulling from different sources and things you learned in the past and weaving that web together is often how like you have your own aha moment while you're prepping the material to teach. And then it's fed back to you from other people with their expertise. And by the time the session's over, it's
yeah.
magnified.
It's wonderful. And it's not just their expertise, it's their small insights from
Ugh.
something they were doing, like knitting, or small
Mm,
insights, what they're doing by parenting, so that
yeah,
it pulls everything into this. So it's, yoga is part of our culture. It is not, it's a way in to
yeah,
oneself. It's a way into the embodiment. It's a way in to be able to pull together all of the circumstances that give you the center. And
mhm.
so uh, I really appreciate how yoga, being a self cultivation technique, actually, if you zoom out, it is so much more. So
It
I really,
is.
yeah. So I'm just really appreciating, moving through my decades with aspects of lots of things that are metaphorical rather than
Yeah.
just physical.
Yeah, it makes it so much bigger, and the older we get and we start to be confronted with different aspects of our bodies changing and stuff, it becomes even more important. I love that you just described that because in the really ancient Tamil texts of southern India and the old goddess tantra traditions, there's this myth that talks about the triadic heart of the goddess and how it's like the three parts of the self. And Kali, her yoga, she's our embodiment in this myth, and she's like the fertile darkness and the primordial being like in her temple. It's just black eyes on a wall, on a black wall. And it says that her yoga is when we're like little bees that get sent out and we gather up the nectar, the honey, like the nectar from all the flowers, and we bring it back to the kula and vomit up our partially digested experiences. And it's made into honey in the collective that nourishes all.
Oh my.
Isn't that beautiful? I think it's such a beautiful, especially because how cool bees are. I've been on a kick about bees lately
Mhm.
and yoga and um, the way bees communicate and the cool things they do. But it's a beautiful description of what we're doing in our communities with yoga.
Right. Well, you
Yeah.
reference nature, and that's really that we are a piece and a fractal and a part and a participant in
Yeah.
every way. And so I think that that also makes it really anything that's universal that we can
Yeah.
all use is great. I do have to say that I know that a lot of our students are originally trained in more traditional Vedic practices.
Yeah.
I have found those less. I have found those less pertinent than the Chinese material because
Totally.
they tend to be hyperbolic
Yeah.
and they tend to be very absoluting
Yeah.
and less, to me, less accessible than the five element theory or some of the other
Of course, because
theoretical.
fundamentally they're salvation traditions. I tell my students this all the time.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, and I'm going to make someone mad saying this, but it was my PhD research. Fundamentally, they are salvation traditions.
Mhm.
You are supposed to be trying to get out of this mess of a body and this experience and to be freed of it. And I used to be a true believer when I was young. That's the other thing that led me to Katonah practice because I am not. And I want to go deeper into my life and my community. And I don't want great nature to be a backdrop for my experience. I want to web my psyche into the greater whole and into great nature and into all of this. And I'm not interested in that type of like salvation. And so for me, finding Katonah and then going deeper into Chinese medicine on my own with some other teachers and coming back and getting deeper and deeper into this material and weaving it with, I'm an oral storyteller and a mythologist, weaving it in with that work. it feels much more alive for me and nourishing and less nihilistic and less
Mhm, mhm.
punishing because, as you
Right.
always say, it always gives you a way out. And Chinese medicine is very gracious and redeeming rather than, I mean, even the doshas in Ayurveda, it means dysfunction and that which it's a defect. And
Yeah.
that's not how we see our elemental nature in Chinese medicine. It's not a defect.
Nothing is, yeah. I mean, that's what I like about also about Chinese medicine. There's nothing that's wrong. There's
Yeah.
always a way to mitigate and to mediate. There's nothing, it's wrong. No one picks something that's wrong. No one does something that's necessarily wrong. No one is born with the wrong whatever. Nature is so generous that way. And so
Yeah.
it's also to mediate polarity really gives you so many options rather than being moralistic.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
I really appreciate it for that reason also. I mean, the Chinese can be incredibly rigid, so it's not all like great. So, but it's how you use all this material.
I know we're not supposed to wash our hair today. It's Chinese New Year's. We're not supposed to wash our hair, take the trash out, all these things we're not supposed to do today. And I'm like, but I didn't take the trash out yesterday. And they said I'm going to throw my wealth out if I take the trash out. It's just leaks. I want to put it in the garbage.
It's waste.
It's
It's waste.
waste. You're not
You know
supposed to
what?
sweep the floor today because it's sweeping your wealth out. I'm like, it's dust. I don't want the dust.
It's
So,
like that. Also, I mean, there are all these things like that. Like, should you eat your placenta and make a smoothie out of it, or is it waste, or do you dump it?
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the baby was like urinating in there. I mean, it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want that smoothie, but other people, but they swear by it. But either way, or
It's
the way that
true.
people say, if you oh, don't donate your organs, right?
Yeah.
Or they say, don't donate your organs because Ty and I were just talking about this morning. Don't donate your organs because you're supposed to be intact with all of your organs to be able to go back and feed the earth with your generosity because there's just a never ending cycle. Right. But, then there are people who say, but, I really want to do that and give someone my eyes so they can have eyesight and live a good life. Well, there's always a way out. There's
Yeah.
always that.
And that's pretty generous.
Yes, that's a mitzvah. Like, oh my
Yeah.
god, good for you.
Exactly.
So, I mean, there's always, um so that's why I really love the whole canon, but it's really also just there for us to use. It is,
Yeah.
nothing should be absolute, nothing's right or wrong. Everything is to explore, and once you make a judgment or too binary,
Yeah.
there's no more exploration, and so
That's right.
the
It's not,
exploration
is
part.
it right or wrong? It's what do I get when I do this? What
Yes,
happens when I
exactly,
put my foot here? What happens if I prop it up? What happens if I don't? What happens if I go
right.
forward? Yeah.
Right, that's why people say, "Oh, in Katonah Yoga, do we do it this way? Do we do it that?" It's you can do it any way. It has to
Yeah.
measure up, it has to work, it's gotta function well, it has to be able to be substantial, it has to have levity and volume, and it has to be on a spit, but there is some that's why, we have explored a shift in the practice to make it more spherical and less linear and less
Yes,
rigid.
you have, and I'm so happy about it.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's been really great.
we've all evolved and it's so much better. I mean, for me, it feels better because that was actually one thing I kind of struggled with in the earlier years of my Katonah practice was because I'm also a dancer and all these things. And I was like, but I want to put some movement in this. I want
Yeah,
to put some more breath and more of the spiral in it. And now that's there. And I'm like, now it feels so good. It's like
yeah.
the little thing, it's got the magic in it now even more.
Right. So, right, we've really made the practice more spherical, and I have to say, it all happened collaboratively. And
Yeah.
that was during the pandemic
Yeah.
when we had this core of a Zoom class. And
Yeah.
together, you know, thank goodness for like spotlighting and doing all these things that we could do now
Yeah.
that I'm so grateful for, and it also makes it really fun to play together, work together, say, "What about this? How come this hurts? Can you see where I'm getting?" It's like really wonderful where we can all learn together and the practice progressives as
Yeah.
everything changes. There's nothing that should stay the same anyway. And you know what? Whether we think that or not, it changes all the time. Everything.
It
Whether
does.
it's your
That's right.
practice, your life, your face, your everything. is, as you
Yeah.
know, because as anyone gets older, we know that. You know,
Yeah.
my family used to be 3 children, me and a husband. Now it's me. I was
Yep.
like,
That's
okay,
right.
how did that all happen? Now I'm really happy to go visit my children, and I'm like happy to live by myself, and I live in a different place. And like time changes everything. And
It
there's this great
does.
quote. Um, oh gosh, okay, there's this great quote. Um, oh gosh, I'm gonna. It's a quote from Aristotle
Okay.
um, about how time sees what circumstance cannot.
Mm, mhm.
And it really means that over time, you really get to have that overview that we want. That over
Yeah.
time, you can really explore, how did I come to here and where do I want to go? And if you really use time to your advantage, you see so much about circumstance, that during the circumstance, there's too much charge, or
That's
during the
right.
circumstance, there's too much emotion, or
Yeah.
during the circumstance, it's too acute. But time allows you to zoom out, and zooming out is really what reflection is. And
Mhm.
for that, I am grateful. That's the
Yeah.
one thing about getting old. Like, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate, and my practice is better than it was 30 years
Your
ago.
practice is amazing. You have a
It's
gorgeous practice, and
That
it's
is because of time, and I keep doing it. And also, I have to say, I sound like a commercial, but home practice.
yeah, no, it's huge. It's one of the primary things I pass on to my students from you is just those basic, the fluency practice, the ground of being practices that
Right.
which they have a book you can buy at the Katonah Yoga or at the studio of their little
Yeah.
book of the home practice manual. And there's plenty of classes on their website where you can practice them. And then once you know the material, go do it on your own. But,
Right.
I've been doing that since you taught it to me years ago in a 10-hour training. And my breath count has increased every year in the poses. It's 44 now because now I'm
Um,
44. Abbie says, breathe in each pose for your age. So that's what I did when I started. It was 30 something, and now we're now we're 44 holding our plow. But it's those longevity practices are huge.
really
They're
wonderful.
huge.
That's great,
Yeah.
Selena. The other
Yeah.
thing is, I think that there are so many ways to uh, give yourself real safety so that you
Yeah.
can explore. Without safety, n- nothing progresses,
No.
whether it's your
And the
life.
safety is internal because there is no external safety. There's no safe spaces. There's no like, is this
Right.
yoga studio a safe space? No. We don't know
Well,
what triggers you.
right. But that's true. On the other hand, it's on us as yoga teachers, or as studio owners, or as people who are creating the foundation for it, the infrastructure, to
Set
help.
up conditions.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
our job is to set up the conditions for safety, whether people are walking into your yoga room or you're teaching any kind of formality. Safety's first, because that's
That's
also
right.
the foundation of it all. And that's why home practice is really a practice for the kidneys, which is all about
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah.
And once you're
Yeah.
safe in your life, you can do anything. You can go anywhere. You have more and more and more options when you're safe. You have less and less options when you feel not safe.
That's
And I
right.
think
And that
that,
safety, what I meant by it's internal is just that the kidney practices, for example, and tending to yourself in that way, and the change we were just speaking of, there's always going to be disruptions and losses and unexpected deaths, and the next thing that's going to
yeah,
rattle you. And that home practice and building internal conditions of safety and trust in the buoyancy of life and trust in the long game of that reflective big view you were just speaking about. For me, that is how I have internal safety, is because I know how to manage my breath. I know how to work with my lymphatic system, calm myself, how to take care of myself so that when those really big disruptive things happen, I'm less taken and shaken by them. But the environment is not safer, like the world. Look at what's
right,
happening right now. Like, how do
right,
we tend to our fear in this
right,
time?
right. That we have to cultivate
Yeah.
safety. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's through the body, because the body is dense, the body is material, the body's in the moment. And it's a beautiful way to create yourself inside yourself as someone who's safe by working with the physical practice, because the
Mm.
physical practice and the breath will take you inside. And then inside, you have your imagination, your intelligence, your intuition, your clairvoyancy. It's like that, you have a world in there
Mhm.
that you can
Yeah.
play with. That's just, for me, that's everything.
It is, and that's how you transmit it back out rather than, all the masks people put on is when they're trying to learn to teach and whatnot. Like, this is gonna sound funny, but one of the exercises my teacher trainees have to do in their 200 hour is spend a lot of time doing home practice, going inside, and then, like, getting into their internal world and practicing opening their eyes face to face with someone else in a breakout room. Like,
Mhm.
go inside, open up your eyes and transmit all your weirdness and your beauty and your internal reality without a word. Just like
Mhm.
bring your presence out. It's hard. It's hard to bring your presence. I think it gets easier as you get older, but a lot of these people are 20 years old, 25 years
Yeah,
old,
yeah, yeah,
And so, and it's very scary to them the first time.
yeah.
And it's funny when everyone opens their eyes, you see their like 5-year-old self for a second. You see the innocence of their vision and their lit up self, and it goes so quick. You know what I mean? When they're being seen, it
Mhm.
disappears. And I'm like, close your eyes, do it again. It's got, you had it. You lost it for a second. It's such
Well,
a
it's
fun
also
practice.
yeah, it's also sort of it should anyway. It'll take you to an exploration of being versus doing,
Yeah.
because we're a doing culture and we're a doing species, and being is much more difficult, and it takes a lot of doing to create that state of being. But it's that being, or that pure contact with somebody else, that I just became a grandmother, and that pure contact with that other person had, with no defenses, that
Mhm.
who's just like, he just knows how to be himself, he doesn't know anything else. It makes me it just gives me like happy hormones. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it allows me to be. And so in that way, when people say, what have you learned to be a grandmother, well, that's what it is. That,
That's beautiful.
yeah, that is really what it's taught me. That
Mm.
um how often are we with somebody who will make no judgments, who, like, like, just like, it's a mind blower for me, just how
Yeah.
it makes me feel. Just it's such a
Mm.
a gift, such a pleasure. And I want that more, because that's what's
Yeah.
gonna keep me alive. That
Yeah.
sense of just being able to um make pure loving contact,
Yeah.
and where I don't want, where I don't need anything from that person. He doesn't, all the needs are the other way. And I'm so happy to give them out.
Yeah, and it's
And
not like that transformation towards non-transactional relationship, which is
yeah.
difficult. I was telling a story, and I lead this like online mythology course for women, and I told this story a couple days ago called Vasilisa the Beautiful, and she goes to the underworld and hangs out with Baba Yaga, and they were asking me a little bit about Baba Yaga, and I said the thing about her is anytime she senses you're there for transactional relationship, she'll devour you. Like, she'll just eat you up, this witchy underworld character, because she
Mhm.
doesn't do transactional relationship. And that's been something I've been thinking about a lot as I'm starting to get older, is how different I am than when I was in my 20s and always kind of positioning with
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
versus now where I'm just like, this person, so look at them. Look how amazing they are.
Mhm.
And it's such a gift to be able to have more of that kind of contact with people.
Right. I mean, if you read anything about, the great philosophers, Viktor Frankl talked about it a lot,
Yes, he
in
did.
terms of finding meaning in your life, to
Yeah.
do those things that you do for their own sake.
Yeah.
That it's not to get something. It's not to teach something. It's not for any kind of procurement of charm or liking or any of that, which our
Yeah.
culture is now full of, and it always has been.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
that
just magnified now with TikTok.
yeah, I suppose, but I think that that's why I also love home practice. You do it not to get good at yoga. You
Yeah,
do it not to do this or not to get that. You do it for its own sake. And the benefits are manifold when you do
yeah,
things purely for the pleasure of doing it.
that's right.
And I think that's what I am learning more and more as I get older, that I want to do those things more and more for the sake of doing them, And for the
Yeah.
process of in the involvement, the process, that's what fills me. I
Yeah.
think that what fills everybody is the process of doing it, not for the end goal.
That's right, and we stop doing so many things because we're not good at them or it's not gonna
Mhm.
be able to be monetized, and because of that, we have a bunch of adults that don't make art. Like, I'm a terrible painter, Abby, and I'm not being
Mhm.
humble. I'm really bad at painting, but I
Mhm.
do it for the pleasure of it because it's fun. They end up sometimes in the trash even, but I just like getting out watercolor paint and doing it, and I honestly don't think I'm ever gonna get better at it, and it's okay. Like, it's
Well,
just for the
you keep.
pleasure of it.
You know what? I disagree. If you keep doing it, you
I'm gonna
certainly.
get better.
Yeah. I think that
But it's
anything
fun
you
that that's
do.
not the goal, I'm just doing
Yes,
it. I'm
but
not
I
in
think
it
if it,
trying to get
right,
better.
but I think if it was the goal, you'd short circuit in some way.
Yeah.
Because if it is the goal, it defies the process.
Mm,
And if you stick with the process, the thing that you're going to get that thing that you actually want, not the thing that you think you want.
that's well said. Yeah.
And I think that that's what we have to, that's why people say trust the process, but I think, I hate those little phrases, but I think that what it is saying is that, just like Louis Pasteur, my very favorite quote of all time, um, is in the field of observation, um, in the field, what is it? In the field of observation, chance favors the prepared mind.
That's right. Yep.
And so trusting the process, you're going to get exponentially so much more than you think you're going to get when you say, oh, how am I going to get that? Like,
Right.
how am I going to get that? Or I want that. Or I'm going to do this to get that. Or I said this, so she would say that. Or I get this. So, that whole binary way of thinking
Yeah.
is what is the tripwire.
It is, and it's very, at the risk of sounding a bit harsh, it's very adolescent. Like mythology speaks, it's in all the fairy tales, all the wonder tales. Like part of the
Yeah.
movement when you read stories of a young person that goes through an initiation to become an adult, on the other side of it is the end of binary thinking. Like,
Mhm.
and of course, we all have adolescent parts of ourselves and less developed parts, but I know that I'm in my adolescent brain when I'm being really binary about things. I'm like, oh, somebody's acting like a teenager right now. That's a very adolescent way of seeing things, and I can check it a little quicker. But like, if you
Well,
think about
yeah,
when you were a teenager,
yeah.
everything's like, and in your
Well,
20s.
in the Jewish faith, we have something called bar mitzvah, right?
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you have, when you become a bar mitzvah, we say you have one, but no, you actually
You
become
become
one.
one.
There's a Torah portion according to when you're born, according to your
Yeah.
birthday, and where this whatever Bible story falls on your birthday. And your job is to not just identify with it, it's to interpret it. And in
Mm.
so doing, that is adult thinking.
Yes.
In so doing, you move out
Well, I
of.
have chills. I didn't know that part of a bar mitzvah. I knew a little bit about it. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And invariably, you have to use your intuition, you have to use your intellect, you have to use your creativity. You know, Bar and Bat Mitzvah had become like some like rite of passage where it's like a party and now but it's actually to become an adult is a totally different way of thinking, literally about these characters in the Bible that are archetypes.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I think that the reference of the archetypes, not the archetypes themselves, but when we reference them, we have insight into our own nature and that of other people around us.
That's
And
what
so
they're
there's,
for. I tell my students all the time in my mythology and folklore classes, like a fairy tale, for example, is a mirror and a prism of your own psyche. And it's like a tarot card. It's like, well, how is it touching you today? Students will reflect. I always ask them from my teacher, Martin Shaw, like, where are you in the story? Who are you in the story? And they'll start to give me they're mad, like, well, the guy in there, he's such a blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, is he? Like, because it actually didn't say anything about him in the story. You pulled all of that feeling about a young man out of yourself. So now you have something to work with. Like they're very confronting and diagnostic like that. And so that makes total sense to me that reading a Torah portion and getting to know the characters in there, and it's going to reflect back your own psyche, and you're going to have that confronting process that you go through. That's an initiation. That's
that's
beautiful.
that's a true initiation. I mean, I think that a lot of, other sects, whatever, a lot of other religions have similar um, similar rites of passage. But I think that if you're conscious about it, it can be a really beautiful ritual of learning how to think well, learning
That's
how to
right.
reflect on yourself well. That's
Yeah,
essentially an adult experience. And
it
like,
is.
as you've mentioned, a lot of adults don't have that, right? But, you know, I have seen that, self cultivation techniques of any kind can actually be a portal into the way one thinks in a larger way so that you're not at the mercy of your unconscious or
Yeah,
you're not at the mercy of the binary way of thinking that most of us are taught with. We are taught in school to memorize things. We're taught this
yeah,
means that and this means this. And there's so many more interesting ways to think and explore things and to get insight and to get meaning out of other people's stories. There's so many ways to do that in this world. And
yeah.
I have found that yoga is a way into that.
It is when the people holding it and the method
Yeah.
is works that way, which is another reason I fell in love with this practice because, like I mentioned, Daegis and I had a long conversation about this on my podcast. But I was a true believer, and I also had come out of religious trauma of a different kind from when I was a child. I grew up in Bible schools where people were telling me I wasn't going to make it to my 18th birthday because of the wars and God coming back and destroying everything. I was terrified. I had nightmares as a child about the world ending, like consistent nightmares. I used to ask, like, get on my knees and pray at night that God wouldn't come back before I got to go to college because I really wanted to go to college and read all the books. Such a nerd. But because of that, and I hadn't healed and integrated that, when I left that, what did I do? I found like liberation in religious yoga sects and ended up with one teacher after another and really strict, dysfunctional teachers after that, and found the same thread again and again and again in the restriction and the top down. And when I found Katonah Yoga, I felt like I could breathe again because it's collaborative, like you said. I remember the pandemic days. I think I did 3 mentorships during the first year and a half of the pandemic. I was like, I have this. I can sit and do these practices.
Mhm.
It expanded. It made it collaborative. No one's the boss of this. We're learning from each other. We're pulling from different material. We're growing together. And it's so nourishing in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that word. That's great.
Yeah.
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 Well, I grew up with uh our parents wanted us to learn all about Judaism, but
Yeah.
they did not believe in God because they were basically children of the Holocaust. And if that
Okay.
happens, there can be no God, according to them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they taught us a very intellectual way in. And to me, it gave me a way then to look for, and what happened is that I started to look for a more esoteric experience, whether it was
Yeah.
through, drugs or starving myself or, there's lots of ways to do it. And
There are.
I
I tried all of those too.
right. And so I ultimately came back to the mind. I
Yeah.
basically came back to my original roots, which are very intellectual parents who loved art and theater and music and the expression of the soul
Mm.
through self expression creatively. And
Yeah.
so I have a real appreciation for how things move, how things change. I think that really what drew me to the Chinese material, how everything
Yeah.
changes all the time, how there's so many. I love the symbols and way that the way that the elements interact to give you something new, the
Yeah.
polarities of everything that you mediate, and all the mediation is implicit.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. I love the implicit. And that's also why I wanted to study next was my study of psychoanalysis. And that to
Yeah.
me, because once I realized, oh, it's going to be the mind for me. I mean, I love being in the body
Yeah.
always, but the mind was going to inform the body. And I
That's right.
realized, oh,
And they're
that's
not separate. You can't just be like, I'm
right.
working with the body right now. That's so Descartesian. And
Right.
not
Well,
accurate.
yeah, that's also like school, the military. We grew up with that kind of separation. And
Also
also,
Rene Descartes' fault.
yes, that's right. He's separated the mind from the body, and then all the Western doctors say, yes, let's do
Yeah,
this. And then
yeah,
started like pill popping. So,
yeah.
you know, um, I think that when you have an imagination, to me, that's everything. Because if you have an imagination, you will develop your intellect. When you
You
have
have
an,
to protect it at all costs, and it's the thing most under attack. That's the other thing I say to my students every session, protect your imagination at all costs.
and why is that under threat?
I think that if, looking at one school, everything you just described, like telling people to get out of the imagination. I also think there's so much slop now. People are just reproducing the same content. For example, in social media, young people are all just making the same video, the same soundbite, replicating each other instead of going into their creative genius. People are putting prompts into, I didn't even know the word because I don't use AI, prompts into the AI bot to think for them. That is all an affront and an attack on imagination. It's there's this very old story called the Handless Maiden that came out in the 12th century when the mill was invented for churning wheat. And in the story, she loses her hands and they're chopped off after she makes a deal with the wrong her father makes a deal with the wrong person, and she
Mhm.
has to regrow them. And the story is about her regrowing her hands. And it's one perspective on that Robert Graves, who is a Jungian analyst, said about this is that it was reflective of the mechanization of things, that people weren't doing stuff by hand anymore.
Mhm.
And that, and women in fairy tales are always kind of referring to our own souls. So it's like, where are we cutting off our own creativity, cutting ourselves off from our own souls and our soul's expression? And guess how she grows them back? In the company of the Wood Sisters, planting things in the earth and telling stories and rekindling her imagination.
Well, now that sounds like she became a good student. I mean, it really sounds like I don't know that anybody can cut off their creativity like these kids who are doing all that what you're talking about social media. I'm not sure that they know how to use it or have it or express it rather than
Yeah.
that it's under any kind of threat. I
Yeah.
think that people aren't taught how to live a reflective life, how to
That's
live
true.
a creative life. I don't think they had it and it's being taken away or it's under threat. I think we have to teach people how to cultivate it.
But children have
And
it. Children are so imaginative.
it's true, but I think there's an over romanticization of
Mm.
the freedom that children have. I've heard a lot of horrible stories,
You've
but
talked about that a lot. Abbie speaks about this a lot, about how
me too.
traumatizing it is to be a child.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not romantic about being a child, and I was like, "Free you are." Remember when you were a child? You said, "No, I don't." You know, when I grew up, I had to think a certain way. I had to get certain grades. I would do a certain thing. I had to
Yeah.
like, in my life. Like, wasn't that fun? I
Yeah.
had fun. 20s, I had fun. As soon as I left and I had great parents. I loved them. They loved me. But like
Yeah.
when I had my own sense of freedom, life got really good. I love being an adult.
Yeah.
It's like I always say, like, I love being an old person. It's like I don't think that anything is under threat. I think that we have to teach people how to use,
Mm.
cultivate, explore, celebrate their originality, their
Yeah.
mind. And I think that's what all of these practices are available for. And I think that,
Yeah. I think
and
the
that's
under
very
threat felt I think the reason it feels under threat a little bit to me is because in these contexts we're speaking of, you're praised, you get praised for being mediocre and replicating what everyone else is doing. Like, it's praised. The algorithm boosts it. And I'm using social media as an example. I actually don't know
yeah.
that much about it because I just go on there and say whatever I want and move on with my life. But it's, there, that is praised. And we're not only not teaching young people how to cultivate their imagination and how to think. We have universities where the humanities are dying. Douglas was telling me his class he teaches Taoism and different things at the University of New York, and he used to have 250 students in class. There's 7 now. like that are even interested in these kinds of topics, and they're told that it's not useful, and then they're in social media land replicating content, AI chatting. So not only are we not teaching them, but now there's a loss of interest and it's rewarded. So I guess that
Right. I think
combo, I was like, ooh,
right, but if you zoom out, I
yeah,
don't think that social media is the culprit. I think social media
no,
is part of
it's
our
a
culture.
symptom.
Totally, because if you really look at look at all these kids, they can't find jobs. It's like,
Yeah,
why would they go to a humanities class when they could go to some place where they could learn a trade or get a
yeah,
job after? Like I think that a lot of this is so systemic.
it
I
is.
I think that social media has the capacity for a real global conversation, which is fantastic. I mean, that's why I started by saying like, well, I love Zoom. Like we're so global now. It's like amazing. I think we're using it well. I
We
think
are.
how you
Yeah,
use these things in terms of the practice, it's like how it's taught, how it's used, but it is there for us to potentiate ourselves.
yeah.
I think that it's gotten very PC to bash social media. Social media is just a bunch of potential.
I
It's
have half of
you
my
know
international connected students I got from social media. I'm not mad
yeah,
at it. Like I have so many, I have stayed on the
sure.
couches of friends in England that I met on social media or had them on a retreat, or like some of my closest friends now are people I met on Instagram. So totally, it's like is
Yeah,
it your God or are you using it as a tool, you know?
yeah, that's right. That's right. And kids who grew up with social media, and I didn't, so I
I
can
didn't
really.
either.
But kids who grew up with it um, are gonna, they'll either use it to explore themselves and talk about what's important to them and what's of value to them and create like a kind of like an esoteric profile for themselves, or they'll follow along until
Yeah.
that's not interesting and they'll do something else. I think that it's
Yeah.
got so much potential. So does AI. I think that all these parents who are screaming about AI, it's like,
I'm
find a way
screaming
to
about AI because we're going to run out of water in 13 years at the present rate that they're using it.
right. And the same thing about crypto. It's like takes so
Yeah.
much climate
Yeah.
energy to be able
Yeah.
to create that. So there's a lot of
And it reduces gray brain matter. Did you read the MIT study on what AI does to the brain?
I have no doubt, but it's like everything has a
Shadow side and a yin and
yeah,
a
everything's
yang.
got a
Yeah.
yin and yang. Yeah, everything. How we
On the
mediate.
underside of the underworld is a flower garden. That's what all
There
the
you go.
stories say. It's
Oh,
so
there you
beautiful. They're like, you're in the underworld, under it is a flower garden.
Of
So you're
course.
right. Of
Yeah.
course there is. I love, by the way, that we're wearing our black and white t-shirts
Yeah.
today for our, I was laughing. I was like, we've got our little yin yang
Yin yang
t-shirts
thing
on
going
for
on.
the, wasn't a plan. Talk about Katonah Yoga and our black and white. I'm going to
Right.
ask you a question as we near our hour. That's a big one.
Okay.
There's a lot of dialogue right now in the yoga sphere on social media and whatnot of like, what's the purpose of yoga in the age of rising fascism? Well, how do we use the practice? It happens to be one of the first things people start cutting spending on is things related to well-being and going to studios. And I'm hearing from teachers around the country, especially in the United States. So you're such a wise woman and you're an older woman. You got the crone sight. So I would love to hear a little bit about what you think about how we use our practice in these really troubling times we're in.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is to make yourself a big human being. So find your center and circumference. Learn lots of techniques. Learn how to articulate. Learn how to make good contact with other people. Learn how to create a local community that is self-sustaining. That learn how to make your self-cultivation techniques, you know, to give yourself sovereignty, because that makes you a participant of the world.
Hmm.
It gives you agency. It gives you substance. It gives you levity. It gives you volume. This is all we got.
Yeah,
This and each other.
yeah,
And so for me, the energy that's moving between us right now, that unspeakable, implicit thing between us is what is so special about interacting with other people to create community and to create local communities. and
Yeah.
to participate well and to be well informed. So self-cultivation techniques, which is yoga is one of, is a really beautiful way to create yourself substantially.
Yeah.
Learn how to, read well, do deep reading. Deep reading is, as you know, creates character. It
Yeah.
creates compassion, self-esteem. It changes your brain. All of
Gives
these
you
things.
more ways to think about things. You can only think with the language you own. And
That's
if you
right.
don't read a lot, you don't have enough language.
Yeah, or writing because it
Or
makes
music
your
or
thoughts
writing or
materializing. Yeah.
yeah.
Or, like I just realized that the whole idea of making an altar is to
Mm.
alter your consciousness. That
That's so good.
everything, yeah, that everything is to give yourself so that you become a big sphere of influence by mediating all of your polarities.
Yeah.
So make yourself a huge sphere. That's
Yeah.
to me the best way to
To
face
navigate.
whatever it is that's coming for you.
Mm.
And so I think that yoga is one of those self cultivation techniques
Mm.
because in yoga, the more you expand your um, collaborative nature, which is lungs, and the more you make yourself safe, which is kidneys, and the better you articulate, which is your heart, right? And the better you process ideas and food, which is your stomach, each way that you can participate with yourself will give you a bigger and bigger and bigger sphere to participate in.
That's
And
right.
so that's my answer to that because that is
That's
the
well
only way.
said. You're just building like a giant net of compassion that's big enough to hold it all because otherwise we get too entangled in the fear around things or too entangled in one or focused on one piece of it. And when we have that spherical self and we can have center and circumference, we can stay kind of equidistance from the things we need to navigate because when it's this close, it's overwhelming. But when you can
Well,
put it,
people's emotions and people's sensitivities and people's opinions keep the view very narrow. It
yeah,
narrows your view to be over emotional or oversensitive or undersensitive. What you
yeah,
really want to have is a big sphere around you of
yeah,
like your money, your house, your relationships, your yoga practice, the way you cook, the way you drive, the way you walk, like everything around you is another spoke of the wheel to make
yeah.
yourself move forward in life, to progress.
That's right,
And
and you can't forget, one of the big things I've learned. I mean, I'd been practicing yoga for so long, but I learned this from you, from doing a few private lessons with you, and then just studying with you, is that, of course, we still might need coaching or psychotherapy or all these different things. And you make no mistake that you can't transform the mind through the body. Like Abbie, the first private I had with her, she was just like, "You are in a puddle." I was like, "I know. I'm the most hypersensitive, emotional blob. I'm hyper flexible." And I spent the next several years from that one lesson cultivating what I knew I needed to cultivate. And
right,
then I was sitting in front of Naveen a couple of years later, and my body reading completely different. She was not like, "You're a puddle. You're this." She was like, "You're holding yourself really well. You're blah 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 blah." And I was like, "It happened." And it happened from that one insight via the body, and then via the body, and of course, the mental activity and the intentionality that I went forward with it, it changed, you
right.
know?
Time, technique, and repetition.
That's right. That's a beautiful place to wrap it up. Abbie, it's spring right now. It is February. Abbie is coming to the UK in April, I believe, and you're coming into Europe, and you've got some things in the US. So I was trying really hard to see if I could come to the UK in April, but I have to go there at the end of March and in May. And I was like, I can't fly to the UK a third time, but I'm determined to get Abbie to Italy with Marco and I at some point.
I love
I
that.
think that would be so fun. But Abbie will be on spring tour in Europe, and then there's lots of amazing online programs. I buy into those frequently, the ones with the 2-hour sessions. I did the 5 phase one last year, and I've
Mm,
done some face reading ones. They're really spectacular. And as we said, if you're a yoga teacher in particular, This is your yoga. Don't let up. Keep training and studying and learning and being in community in that way. I will put in the show notes information about how to access Abbie's trainings. Also, the digital studio they have, like that's where I practice if I want to hear a teacher. That's when I want to not do my home practice. I log into the studio site so I can listen to someone else. So can't recommend it enough. It's like $30. It's so worth it. Um, Abbie, do you have anything else to say to the people?
Um, keep practicing. Don't be strangers. Find us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
come find her. She'll change
Yeah.
your life. She's fabulous. And I want to be you when I grow up. My
Yes.
version of you, but I intend to still be kicking and practicing and teaching when I'm your age.
Well, you're doing wonderfully, Selena. So you're doing
Thank you
something
so
right.
much. Thank you so much, Abbie. It was so
Thanks for
lovely to
having
have
me.
you.
This was fun.